Well, we're glad you're with us today. Thank you for being a part of this service and of this series. Last week, we started our series, How to Make the Most of Your Life, by acknowledging the fact that we all have a list for how to do that. And of course, as soon as we acknowledge that we have a list, we want to ask the question, how do we know for sure if our list is actually correct? Because our lists are usually the result of a preferred narrative of how our culture interprets the things that we can see. And most of the time, generally speaking, that ends up for you and me thinking that the way I make the most of my life is when I gain or get as much as I can. However, we also saw last week that Jesus called us to follow him, that he is the key to making the most of our lives, and that the core of his life and his idea about how to live was to actually give our lives away. And so we asked ourselves whether or not we trust him enough to adjust what is on our list so that it reflects his. Starting today, we want to begin to look at the kind of adjustments that Jesus calls us to make in order to make the most of our lives. In the 1970s, Steve Wozniak was working for Hewlett Packard, and he happened to be building a personal computer. And so he went to Hewlett Packard and tried to get them involved in the project. But Hewlett Packard responded to him saying that people would never use personal computers in their homes, if you can imagine that. Instead, Wozniak and his friend Steve Jobs went off on their own into their garage and they built the computer themselves. It was called the Apple I. Some of you may have actually owned one of those. I remember when I got my first Apple. But in that moment, Hewlett Packard missed the moment. When Jobs was launching Apple computers, he was working for a guy named Nolan Bushnell at Atari, and he was looking for capital to, support the project. And so he went to Bushnell and he offered him a third of the company for a $50,000 investment. Bushnell turned him down and missed the chance to join the ranks of the super rich. Ronald Wayne was the lesser-known third co-founder of Apple. You may probably have never heard of him. In 1976, Wayne drew up the agreements allocating roles to himself, to Jobs, and to Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne also created the first Apple logo. However, as the oldest and most financially secure of the three, Wayne became concerned that any business debts that they might incur would actually fall to him. And due to this risk, just 12 days into his role, he sold his 10% stake of Apple Computers for a meager $800. As you might know, Apple is now worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.7 trillion. And if Wayne had kept his share, he would easily be one of the wealthiest people alive in the world today. Hewlett Packard, Nolan Bushnell, and Ronald Wayne all missed the moment. And as you probably realize, it's common to miss moments in our lives that can change our lives. We all do it, even if not on such a grand scale. Let me suggest a few. You miss the opportunity to step up at work, to take on some kind of a significant project. And the reason you do that is because you know yourself pretty well. You know that in the past, you have tended to not endure through difficult things. And you know that that project may hit some hard times. And you're just not sure that you can persevere. And so you turn it down. You miss the chance to say your final goodbye at a loved one's death. And as a result, you never get to bring closure to that relationship. Or maybe you just regularly turn down social engagements with friends. They invite you, they want to include you, but as time goes on and you keep turning them down, they stop inviting and you get lonelier and more isolated. Or maybe this has happened to you. You feel prompted by the Spirit of God to be generous toward a person or a project, but when you were growing up, you never had enough money. Your family didn't make much, and something got inside of you that just makes you concerned about being overly generous. And so you miss the opportunity to see a few dollars change someone's life, perhaps even to change it for eternity. You feel convicted about a habit in your life that you know is wasting your time, energy, and resources, but you hang on to it as your private escape, even though you know that it grieves the Spirit of God and it hollows out your own soul. You avoid intimacy with your spouse, and you're not even sure why. You just know it makes you uncomfortable. And so instead of solving the problem, you continue to drift apart, even though you know where that might lead. One of the moments I regret missing most were on our family vacations to the Kenyan coast. Kenya is on the Indian Ocean, and it has unbelievably beautiful white sand beaches and warm turquoise waters. It was a vacation dreamland, especially for children to play on the beach and to swim in the pools of the hotels. And I have a skin condition that requires me to wear sunblock every day. And of course, getting in the water to swim and play with my kids would have washed that off. And so instead of figuring it out, I used it as an excuse and missed multiple chances to make lifelong memories with my own children. We almost always have a reason or an excuse for missing the significant moments in our lives, don't we? I'm just too busy. It's not my style. There'll be other chances. I don't have enough energy. That person hurt my feelings. And here's the thing. Our excuses always seem legitimate, even persuasive in the moment, until we realize, often when it's too late, that there are some moments that come our way that when they're gone, they're gone. They never come our way again. Making the most of these moments is often critical to making the most of our lives. So how do you and I make sure to seize the moments that come our way instead of making excuses that cause us to miss them? You know, the Gospels are full of stories about people just like you and me who missed opportunities for Jesus to do something magnificent in their lives. And I think one of the most understated missed opportunities took place in a village in the region of Samaria that Luke recorded for us in Luke chapter 9. The story begins like this. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Luke 9 begins a section of Luke's gospel that is unique to him. Scholars have named it the journey to Jerusalem or simply the travel narrative. This section actually comprises 37% of Luke's gospel, and it concludes in chapter 19, verse 44, with Jesus weeping over the city of Jerusalem because he knew that their rejection of him was going to lead to their destruction in AD 70. In this section of Luke's gospel, Jesus was preparing his disciples for his departure. He was challenging the Jewish leadership, and he was also steadily moving toward Jerusalem, where he would complete his mission and then ascend back to heaven. And so the first stop on this journey was a village in Samaria. Look what Luke said. And he sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him. Now, just like any of us who traveled, Jesus and those who were with him, they needed a place to stay, they needed food to eat, they needed a place to sleep, and they needed some privacy in order to handle some basic toiletries. And so Jesus sent messengers ahead of him to try to make these arrangements. But look at how the village responded. But the people did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem. This is the beginning of their missed moment. And it's a little surprising because I think at least in part, they understood the choice they were making. At this point in Jesus' ministry, he was incredibly well known. Jesus had gone from village to village. He had healed people sick. He had raised the dead. He taught in unbelievable ways that they had never heard before. We even have it recorded for us. You'll remember that one time he stopped a storm in its tracks. We could almost say that Jesus was kind of a rock star in his own day. And even though they had no means of modern communication, with someone making the kind of unusual news that Jesus was making, word spread about him quickly. It was like messages going through a grapevine. There would have been almost no chance that the people of this village would not have known about Jesus of Nazareth and would not have known the kind of things he typically did when he went to someone's village. Not only this, but Jesus actually had a reputation in Samaria. You may remember that John recorded this for us in John chapter 4, that Jesus went to a Samaritan village by the name of Sychar. And we don't know everything that Jesus did while he was at that village, but he stayed for 2 days with them. And while he was there, when he finished, the people, it says the people of the village, all of them actually believed in him. So why, with this kind of a reputation, did this Samaritan village turn down the chance to make room for Jesus and in the process miss this moment in their life? In other words, what was their excuse? Well, Luke told us that it was because his face was set toward Jerusalem. But this was simply the pretext for their excuse. The real reason ran far deeper. From Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well in that village of Sychar, we know that there was serious animosity between Samaritans and Jews. You may recall that when Jesus arrived, he asked her for a drink of water. And you may recall her response. She said, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Samaritans and Jews didn't get along. Jews tended to look down on them, both racially and religiously. And for this reason, Jews regularly shunned Samaritans. They would have nothing to do with them. They refused to even step foot in their region. And we're told that some Jews, even though they'd gone around the region of Samaria, when they would come back into Galilee or enter into Judea, they would take their sandals off and clap them together, just in case any Samaritan soil had gotten on their shoes. And then they'd put them back on and continue their trip. They wanted nothing to do with Samaritans. Well, you can imagine how this made Samaritan people feel. This had gone on so long that the pain of their past ran very deep. Any loyal Samaritan would take any opportunity to throw back in the face of the Jews the same rejection that they had felt from them. Jesus was a Jew. He was traveling toward Jerusalem, the capital of the Jews. So in their pain and pride, These Samaritans weren't about to allow any Jew to spend a night in their village. So to their own loss, they refused to make room for Jesus, the one Jew who had actually proven that he cared about Samaritan people. They missed the moment. Instead, they opted to inflict a little pain of their own. And this wouldn't surprise us because maybe you've heard the old saying, it's hurt people who hurt people. These Samaritans were hurting, so why not inflict a little pain toward those who had hurt them? This was their chance to get even if just a little bit, by issuing a stinging rebuke. And sting it did. Because look at what Luke told us next. He said, and when his disciples, James and John, saw it, that they had rejected Jesus, they said, Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them as Elijah did? Now, Elijah was fresh on James and John's mind because we're told that just 24 verses earlier, they, together with Peter, had been with Jesus and Elijah and Moses on the Mount of Transfiguration. And since Elijah had called down fire on the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, they thought, why not do it again? But Jesus would have none of this attitude. Look at what he said. He said, but he turned and rebuked them. And he said, you do not know what manner of spirit you are of, for the Son of Man came not to destroy people's lives, but to save them. The word destroy translates an important Greek word. It's used 92 times in the New Testament, and it's often used in contrast to this word save. The word meant to kill, to amputate part of your body, to die, to ruin, to waste, to lose something of value, to be destroyed eternally in hell. And it also meant to destroy a place and the people who lived there so that they would have no hope of recovery. James and John had the last one in mind. As far as they were concerned, this was a WWE moment. They'd been working out like this their whole life for a moment just like this. They were ready to climb the ropes, and they were ready to pounce and to come down with all the weight and authority of Jesus into the backs of these Samaritan people. They wanted to humiliate this village, and they wanted to do it in the name of Jesus. I don't know, I never thought about Jesus at a wrestling event. I don't know if he ever would have wanted to go to WrestleMania or not. But he would have nothing to do with what James and John were talking about. James and John totally missed what Jesus was about. In Jesus' mind, it was understandable that the Samaritans would miss him, but it was unthinkable that two of his closest disciples would get this moment so wrong. So how did they miss Jesus so badly? Well, they missed Jesus for the same reason the Samaritans did. The pain they felt from being rejected incensed their own pride, and it gave them the excuse they were looking for to inflict pain. And at the moment, it seemed so legitimate to James and John because it's hurt people who hurt people. But even the suggestion of doing so brought a rebuke from Jesus. And church, we just need to be reminded that there is no quicker way for us to draw the Lord's ire than for us to use his name as an excuse to inflict our pain on others, no matter the pain they inflict on us. Jesus made it as plain as possible that he did not come to destroy people's lives, but to save them. Now, this word save is the same word we encountered last week in Matthew 16:25. And it's the basis, you may recall, for this entire series that we are doing. The word was used in 4 or 5 different ways in the New Testament. It was used for giving eternal life to someone, rescuing them from hell to heaven. Jesus wanted to do that in this village. He had come to save them. But it was also used for healing the sick. He had done that in many villages. He would probably have done that in this village. It also was used for preventing someone from dying. It was used to free someone from the power of sin in their lives so that they wouldn't waste their lives. Jesus could have taught them how to do that. And it was also used for making the most of their lives. And without a doubt, that is what Jesus wanted to do in this village. James and John and the people of this village all needed what Jesus had to offer. They all needed to be saved. They all needed to have him make the most of their lives. They needed to know the Savior who could free them from the pain of their past and deliver them from the pettiness that was causing them to miss one of the greatest moments in their lives. Jesus was just up the road. He was coming toward them. All they had to do was make room, but they refused and they missed the moment, being persuaded that their excuses were totally legit. There was no reason for James and John to call down fire on this village by choosing their way instead of the way. The people of this village missed their best chance to be freed from the pain of their past that bound them and caused them to miss this present opportunity. Because of their unresolved pain, neither James nor John nor these Samaritans were able to make the most of their lives. Because of their past, they couldn't live in the present, and as a result, they missed the one person who could actually change them. They were, to use Jesus' word, destroying themselves. When our pain dominates us, when it binds us in our past and in our pettiness and in our ways that hurt other people and that cause you and me to miss the moments that can make the most of our life, it always destroys us. Because there are some moments that come our way that when they're gone, they're gone. They never come our way again. So how do we make sure that we don't miss Jesus in these moments, the one who can make the most of our lives? Well, the answer is in verse 52, so let's go back to it. And he sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him. This phrase translates the Greek word etoimazo. It was used two ways in the New Testament. The first way it was used was to prepare a road for a visiting dignitary by straightening it out and leveling it completely so that that dignitary could come into a village or a region and not have to make any adjustments at all. Jesus was actually not using it in that way. He was just up the road. There was no time for a highway project. Instead, he was using it in the second way it was commonly used in the New Testament, and that was to make room for him. It was to host him. It was to prepare for a meal. You know what it's like. It's like inviting someone over to eat with you and making all the necessary arrangements for that to happen. Jesus was inviting himself to dinner. Or if you want to think about it, it would be like him texting you today and kind of out of the blue, he's saying, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Can I come hang out? How are you going to respond to his text? His point is that if you'll make room for me, I'll make the most of your life. If they would, he would. If we don't, he can't. So will you make room? You're going to answer him and say, oh, dude, sorry, man, I'm busy. Or are you going to answer his text and say, oh, I'd love to, maybe later. Or maybe you're going to do what a lot of us do when we really don't want to do it. We just ignore the text, right? Oh, yeah, I never saw it. When we refuse to make room for Jesus, he doesn't call down fire on us. There's no need. Every time we reject him, we ruin something else. Every time we wave him off, we waste another moment. Every time we leave him out, we lose out. Because I want you to look at how Luke concluded the story. He said, and they went on to another village. I think this is one of the great understatements in the New Testament, because there are some moments that come our way that when they're gone, they're gone. They never come our way again. And so today, I'm asking you to make an adjustment. Today, I'm asking you to make room for Jesus. Today, I'm asking you to answer his text, to invite him over, to host him, to invite him in, because he is the one person who can make the most of your life. I'm asking you to not permit the pain of your past to cause you to miss in the present what Jesus wants to do in you. Make room. Don't miss the moment. You know, when Chad and the elders called me about coming as to be the interim speaker here at Faith Bible Church for this period of time, I didn't want to come. In fact, I kind of almost immediately started making excuses with Chad. Doing this was not on my list, all right? I'd kind of already moved into semi-retirement, and I have to admit that the call pretty much took me completely by surprise, and I had plenty of excuses. The first one was kind of very spiritual. I have a counseling ministry, and I don't see hundreds of people, but I see a regular, steady stream of people. And it was like, Chad, I just don't have time, man. You know, I got other people. In fact, right now, because I am doing this work, I got people standing in line waiting. Can't get to them. Don't have time. So that was a pretty good excuse, and it seemed like a real spiritual one to me. And then, of course, Junction is just a long way from here. Some of you asked, like, where are you from? And, you know, you just wouldn't believe where I'm from right now. You know, I'm so far out in the boonies. There was no chance to watch the Super Bowl at my house last week, if that puts it into perspective. There's ranch work that needs to be done. I mean, I got trees that have fallen down on the river bottom. I got a lot of chainsawing that needs to be done. I got brush that needs to be hauled to the fire pit and burned. In March, it's going to start raining again. I'm going to have stuff growing everywhere. I need to kill that stuff. I mean, you know, there's just ranch work that has to happen. And I haven't even built the road into our house yet. I mean, like, you know, we're driving through the mud to get to our place. And so I need to do that. And I don't need the money. And so I had all kinds of excuses, but I knew they were excuses to hide the real reason. You see, the real reason for not wanting to come is that I knew that I couldn't measure up to your previous pastors. I mean, Anderson's brilliant, and Pollock is really good. And I'd heard that over and over again, and it's like, there's no way that I can measure up to these guys. I'm just not as good. I can't compare to them. So when Chad called me to ask if I would consider, the pain of my past came roaring to life. And y'all, I know it was probably just like that little guy, you know, that sits on your shoulder and whispers into your ears, but it sounded to me like that little guy was screaming in my ears, Witte, you're not good enough. If you do this, there's a good chance you're going to expose the fact that you're not good enough. Sunday happens to come around every 7 days. And every 7 days, you're going to get the chance in front of about 1,000 people in 2 services to prove the fact that you're not good enough. Just say no, man. I mean, you're going to have to work your tail off to have any chance of being close. And even then, you might not get close enough. So say no, walk away, and whatever you do, don't adjust your list. That's the conversation that was going on in my ear. And I almost let the pain of my own past and the pride that it has engendered in me to make an excuse for missing a moment that I think maybe Jesus brought my way. Now, I don't tell you this to look for sympathy. I'm not hoping that some of you come up after the service and say, oh, no, Witte, we like you more than Anderson. Yeah, no, I mean, you can if you want, but I'm not looking for that, all right? I'm letting you look into a weakness in my own life. And y'all, this just happened in December. It's not like this happened 10 years ago. This just happened in December. But I want you to look into a weakness in my own life to show you how easy it is for you and me to allow the pain of our past to develop pride in us so that we can create excuses to miss the moments that can make the most of our lives. It is so easy for us to do. If the Samaritans could do it, and if James and John could do it, and if I just did it, so can you. And wouldn't it be tragic for you and me to miss what Jesus wants to do in our lives in the present because we are bound by the pain of our past? And so what I'd like to do this morning to close our service is I'd like to just guide you through a moment while Michael plays behind us. And I want to ask you, if you would, please, where you are, just bow your head and close your eyes. Not because there's anything magical about that. I want you to just give privacy to the person around you, okay? And I just want to ask you a few questions. Do you know the pain that has dogged you through your whole life? And if you do know about it, how has that pain caused you to hurt others? How has it harmed your relationships? Maybe it's what causes you to mistreat your spouse. Maybe it's what causes you to remain distant from your children. Maybe it's the pain that causes you to talk down about others behind their backs, but be really friendly to them to their face. Maybe it's what causes you, like me, to want to step back when you ought to step up. What's the pain? Do you know? Secondly, what moments have you missed in your own life because of this pain? I have a hunch you've been thinking about those the whole time I've been talking. What moments have you missed? What has God consistently wanted to do in your life, but you wouldn't let Him because of that pain? Is there any hope that you could get those moments back? Some moments when they're gone, they're gone. We don't ever get them again. But on occasion, we get a do-over. On occasion, we get another chance. What moments have you missed that, if possible, you need to try to get back? How have you kept Jesus at arm's length in your own life? Has He been texting you, but you always have an excuse? Has He been texting you, but you just ignore the text, you don't respond? And then what steps might you actually be able to take to deal with the pain of your past, to reclaim a moment that you've missed, and to invite Him in?